SuperTalk.com. And we all know that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and you hear all the time how important it is to get screened, particularly us women. And our guest today is doubling down to get you to get out and get your girls taken care of. Joining us is our favorite celebrity chef out of Oxford, Miss Elizabeth Heiskell. Hey, Elizabeth.
Hey, hon, how are you?
Like so many times, I'm sitting there drinking my coffee, watching the Today Show on NBC, and up pops your beautiful face. And I get so excited until this last time you were decked out in pink. And I thought, oh, look at her. And then you went on to share a very personal story about the last couple of months of your life. And my heart broke for you, but then also was so inspired by how you've been able to find the silver lining in, in a hard path. So,
yeah.
So, I mean, what's life been like for the last couple of months, Elizabeth?
It's been a little rough, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I think, well, there are lots of things that go along with this, but part of it was that I was so blindsided. This was not on my radar. I don't have it in my family. I was in great shape. I had, going to my 5:30 yoga class, feeling good. I'd lost a bunch of weight. Life was amazing. And I mean, it still is amazing, but it just really caught me off guard. It's almost, it's traumatic, honestly. It is, when you're told something like this and you have absolutely no warning, you go through kind of all of those stages of trauma, almost like you've been hit by a bus. Honestly, it's kind of what I felt like.
Well, Elizabeth, I read where you were in a sports bar there in Oxford watching as the world watched Ole Miss Rebels win the national championship in baseball, and explain how that changed everything for you.
So I was actually at St. Leo's, which is my favorite restaurant in the entire world here in Oxford. And I had a big group, and we had this long table. All my friends were there, and we were watching the game. My husband had gone. We were pretty much the last people left in Oxford, honestly, because everybody else had left and gone to Omaha. And so I literally just went to scratch my chest and felt this lump, this big lump. And like I said, I had lost some weight. So you know how the girls do, they kind of shrink down a little bit. And so it was so much more evident. And I thought, it's just a fatty tumor. Like, this is nothing. Has to be. Because I honestly thought that I had a mammogram 8 months before. And when I went to see my OB, Julie Harper, I said, it has to just be something, weird, because I know I had a mammogram 8 months ago. So she said, well, let me go pull that. Let's look at that. So she left, and she came back in, and she had this really pretty worried look on her face. And she said, Elizabeth, it was not 8 months, honey. It was 2 years ago. Yeah. And I would have sworn on my life. I mean, and that's the thing that's so terrifying, is that I would not have gone to have another one, for probably a year,
Right.
I mean, and so I guess if anybody hears anything, I think we kind of, since COVID, and I hate to blame any and everything on COVID, but I do think our sense of time has kind of messed up. It's almost like there was just sort of like this black hole, this big void. And so, even if you think you just had it, go ahead and check anyway. Call your doctor, see when the last time you had one was, just to double check. Just do it for me is all I'm asking.
Because you just never know, really. And I think there's so many women, particularly we go in for our different screenings and checkups that we're supposed to every year. And, man, 1 year goes by and you could forget, and then it's 2. And then, so many things can be hiding. And the problem with that is if it's caught in time, the success rate is much higher. And so that's the urgency to get you out and get you taken care of. So, Elizabeth, you had to sit in the chair, though, and hear the words that so many listening to Good Things have heard before, or have heard a family member hear before. What was it like for you when you got delivered the news?
Oh, my God. Well, I was just so in denial about this whole thing. And my friends, I could tell every time I saw them, they looked real worried while I was waiting on the biopsy to come back. And I think there were some side texts going on. I did find out later that my OB, Julie, she said when she felt it, she knew that it was cancer. And the radiologist admitted that he also knew that it was. And the surgeon that did the biopsy, Walker Byers, he said the same thing. He said I would have bet my house on it. So everybody else kind of realized what was going on. I was sort of the last one to know. I was headed to Memphis. We're working with Gold Belly to get our Smith Lake cake, coconut glop cake, my grandmother's mocha cake, with that company, so that you'll be able to buy them from all over the United States, which will be wonderful. So I was on my way to Memphis to meet with Gold Belly, and I had a cake in the car, and my husband said, "Why don't you take Mary Paxton with you?" And I said, "Yeah, I mean, that's fine." He said, "Well, you could get the call, you know." And I said, "It's going to be fine, but okay, I'll take her with me." So Mary Paxton, my middle child, was with me, and sure enough, we got a call from Walker Byers, and I saw his name pop up on my phone, and you know, he said, "Elizabeth, I hate to make this call," and my heart just sunk. And he said, "You have invasive ductal carcinoma." And I mean, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I think everyone kind of says that has heard those words, you know, in one way or the other. I mean, literally, like you feel like you've been hit by a bus. You can't think. You can't. It's horrific. And you know, that honestly, that took me, I swear, about 2 months for it just to even settle in. You know, that and there's still days that I forget and have to kind of remember.
What was your next step, though, Elizabeth? I mean, obviously you had one of your middle daughter there with you on your trip. You probably weren't driving or had someone else with you. I mean, what happened? Oh, you were driving. I hope you pulled over.
So we turned around. We did. I was like, "Oh my God, what do we do? What do we do?" Like something was on fire. You know, Mary's like, "We need to go home. We need to go home." I was like, "I know, but if we go home, then your dad and Lucia are going to know something. My youngest child is going to go on know something's wrong because we just left." You know, and anyway, so we got home, and my husband was there, and when we walked in the door, he knew. And, you know, it was so hard for me to get those words out, because you know that when you say them, you know, you're breaking your children's hearts. You're putting fear in their minds. You know, and that's the last thing as a parent that we want to do, is burden our children, you know, with fear. We're there to try to take all of that away. And, you know, we didn't know what was going on. I didn't even really know what kind of breast cancer I had. I mean, you know, there were all of these things. And so a lot of unknowns. And that's also the very hard part, is that I think once you kind of get a plan, once you know what you're doing, you can deal with it. You know, the unknown is when your brain just loves to take over and, you know, and just
go in so many different directions. You talked openly, too, about...
It creates all these horrific scenarios, you know?
And then you don't know until you walk through it, so there's no reason to just assume, because you never know what your outcome necessarily could be. But you talked openly, too, about your village that came up in their own unique ways to sort of support you, whether it looked differently from your families to friends who just knew what Elizabeth May needed in that time. Share some of that, because those of us who have loved ones walking through this, you know, there's those small acts of kindness really mattered to you.
And I want you to realize that one of the things is, I think we all get nudges from God at times to do a little something, you know, and it may just be, "Hey, you know, you've got extra of that. Why don't you run it over to so," you know, it's just a soft voice in the back of your head. But when you hear that voice, or when you have an inclination, or you feel like, you know what, I really need to do this, there's a reason. And yes, you need to do it, you know, and it doesn't have to be anything major. I mean, literally, I can't tell you, some of the sweetest things that people have done have been the smallest things. You know, it was like one of my friends who I said on the show, they sent me a nightlight because I had been talking about how the nights were so hard. And, you know, at that point when I didn't know what was going on and there were so many unanswered questions, I would just be up in the middle of the night, just in literal terror. And so they sent me a nightlight. It was this funny little owl nightlight. We pressed the button and his eyes glowed. You know, I mean, it just little things like that. Like one of my best friends, his precious son, well, they have 3 children, but the littlest, who's just 5, his name's Wyatt. And so they drive by my house every morning for school, on the way to school and on the way back. And so David would tell him, let's pray for Miss Elizabeth as they drove by. And so then they started honking the horn. So every morning at 7:10, depending, sometimes they're a little late, 7:15, I hear the honk outside. And sometimes I'll run out and wave, and it's just.
Well, Elizabeth, I'm going to honk at you and make you hang on for just a second, okay? We got more with Elizabeth coming up next. Honk for her if you're out there driving, listening to Good Things. You took a little toot-toot for Elizabeth Heiskell as she continued our conversation. I realized after I said that, Elizabeth, I was like, you see those honk for Jesus signs and people do it. So hopefully hopefully we had a lot of toot-toots on the way, across the waves here for SuperTalk and for you and your journey. But I love that. What I love is that your neighbors found a way, even as young as he was, just to let you know that you were on their minds as you were walking a journey. They just had no other way to help, right? Like you're the one that had to go through that. I know your treatment, you decided to you chose the route of chemo. Tell us what it was like the morning of your first round of chemo.
Oh, good God. It was just a nightmare. I had turned it into a nightmare, and I had been so nervous, and I was just a wreck by the time we got there. And my husband was just as nervous and just as much a wreck. And, so we got there, and of course, typical me, like I didn't know what to bring, but I wanted to be prepared. So, honey, I packed a suitcase like I was going, on a Caribbean cruise or something. So in there I had my blanket and I had a pillow and I had my cold cap, which is it's what I wear on my head during treatment, and it freezes my head. It literally freezes your hair follicles. So I've been able to maintain my hair. I've lost some, but still, if you just looked at me, you wouldn't know. So it had the cold cap. I mean, it just had snacks. I mean, like I was going to Antarctica or something. Anyway, so we roll in with our suitcase, and I'm sure everybody in the whole place was going, oh my God, well, this is obviously her first time here. And I had built this up to be such a terrifying experience in my head. I mean, my imagination is pretty amazing, and usually I use it for good, but I'd really let it go into a really scary direction. And so the thing that was so interesting is that everything that happened to me that day, whether it was when they accessed my port, which is where they were going to be putting the chemo in, it was like, oh, well, that wasn't so bad, and then I would go and do, they would start one of the drugs, and I was like, oh, well, that wasn't so bad. Everything that they did that day, which is a long day, it was about 7 hours, I said to myself, well, that wasn't so bad. The cold cap was supposed to be absolutely brutal, and yes, it was uncomfortable, but it was certainly doable. And, I had built that thing into just horrific. And, and when I left, I texted my girls. I have 3 girls who are just absolutely wonderful. And I said, you know what? I said, we're not going to let fear drive our bus. Do you understand? I said, girls, the same energy, the same thought process, the same imagination that makes fear and that makes these horrible, terrifying scenarios that just shake us to our core. That's the same exact thought process, same brain, same everything that we can use to dream, that we can use to visualize, us being somewhere wonderful. Or, it's, and I just said, we're not going to do that anymore. So, if you start fearing, you're just going to have to switch it off and turn to something that is wonderful. And, and so that was really a very sort of life-changing kind of thing for me. I mean, and I think it's really interesting because, I'm a very spiritual person. I believe in, all of these wonderful principles. I meditate and I go to yoga, but, did I really practice it every day? Did I really practice it so far deep down that it just gets you in the gut? Probably not, not all the time. But things have really changed since this diagnosis. So even in this mess, you can find really beautiful silver linings. And that's where I'm trying to stay, is in that silver lining area. Because the thing that's so amazing is that if you focus on silver linings, and it may be something as small as, the warm robes they give you when you go for your checkup, at the hospital, they give you these nice warm robes, and they're lovely. And, you almost feel like you're at a spa for a few minutes until they take that take your boob and stick it in that mammogram machine, and you real quickly remember you are not at a spa. But maybe it's just that, or maybe it's the fact that you have enough gas in your car to get you to your chemo treatment. Maybe it's that the chemo treatments are working. Maybe it's that you have medication that that helps with the symptoms. Whatever it is, there is. I mean, if you're just looking for them, and then the thing that's so interesting is that the more you look for silver linings, the more silver linings will come your way. The more you focus on those, then the silver lining it's no longer a lining. It is the actual fabric, and all that negative mess is just the lining.
And how often do all of us, Elizabeth, walk through the day and just, overlook our own silver linings and whatever mess we're going through? Maybe we're not walking a cancer journey, but we may be the supporter or the spouse of someone who is, or our mess looks a little bit different. I know you found your way, too, back to the kitchen, which is kind of your holy ground. Where
going through a divorce, any of these things, there's so many traumas and so much pain that we do have to endure in this life, and it does get messy, and you choose how you're going to handle it. And, and I choose to look for silver linings. And
kitchens get messy. Have you gotten your kitchen messy since, gotten in there? And yeah.
It's funny because my doctor, oh Lord, I mean, I'm telling on myself, but so I went in, and then I guess maybe my second time I came in chemo, he didn't tell me what my weight was, and I certainly didn't ask, but he said, one of the biggest side effects of chemo is weight gain. And I said, excuse me? And he said, yes. He said, because what people do is, he said, I call it squirrel eating, where you on the 2 weeks that you feel really good, because mine's every 3 weeks. So on the 2 weeks that you feel really good, you overeat to overcompensate for the week that you may not be feeling good. And he said, usually people don't feel that bad. So they still are eating that, that chemo week. So you end up trying to squirrel away all of this food. And of course, how much I love food. It is my life, and it is what I use to comfort myself. And so, I mean, it has been, a bit of a battle because,
I think you deserve all the cake you want, though. I think you give yourself a little bit of grace during this period, Elizabeth. And I think, too, your friends could grab one of your cookbooks, what do I bring, and bring you one of your own recipes. I think that might be a good place to start as well. But, where are you, if you don't, in your journey? You mentioned you're still in your treatments. I know you just started this summer. People who want to be praying or thinking about you, where are you right now in your journey with breast cancer?
Yes, so please prayers of thanksgiving, because the first thing the children has already shown.
Prayers of thanksgiving of all kind, for sure. We definitely want to keep Elizabeth and her family, but then all of those that are walking through this journey of breast cancer or any form of cancer, they say that cancer is the one person who's actually, living with the disease, but then you have everyone else around them who is also supporting them through their efforts, through their treatment, and also they're trying to figure out and sort of mull through whatever the next steps or what the future may look like. But what I take most from Elizabeth's journey and her story is the idea of finding those silver linings, which we can all do every day. And I think, too, the young boy who decided to honk for her, I think is something we can all do. Elizabeth, for every woman out there with a set of boobs, I guess men, too, we leave them out of this during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Give us your best go of going and getting them bad boys checked out.
I'm telling you, if just do yourself a favor, go make an appointment right now. And there's no reason. You've got to put yourself first. You have got to put yourself first on this. Otherwise, you're if you don't take care of yourself in at least this, then it can end up in a much more serious situation than it has to be. So please take a minute, put yourself first today, and make your appointment. I'm begging you.
Well, we appreciate the minute you gave us here on Good Things to share your story. I'm so inspired. Well, you'll have to get back with us when you get your cakes onto Gold Belly so we can all have a taste of what Elizabeth does best, which is cook up yummy food. Yeah.
We will let you know because, baby, we are dreaming big over here now. So All right, honey. I love talking to you always. Y'all take care, and I can't thank you enough for your prayers and your support. I'm grateful, deeply, deeply grateful.
Toot toot. Toot toot. Bye, girl. Again, I think that was some of the best. And I think, too, whenever, we try to shield our kids from maybe what's going on in the grown-up world. But oftentimes, if you welcome them into praying for, their grandparent, their aunt, the person down the street, or ask them, what would you like to do for Miss Elizabeth or whomever it may be? It could be drawing them a picture of encouragement. It could be baking them their own cookies or the simple honk. You just never know what that act of kindness will mean to someone as well. So what great inspirations, prayers for not only Elizabeth, but all of you who are walking through that cancer journey, whatever that looks like right now. But we're going to shift gears and turn to a younger little artist who's making waves there at USM coming up next.